Hi, I'm Peter from Accounting Business Solutions by JCS, and welcome to another of our demonstration series tips on the secrets to success with your accounting system. Today, we're going to be looking at Sage 50 US Edition, which was formerly called Peachtree, and how we can use it to track expenses that have been paid via credit card. There are a lot of different ways that we can do this entry. But by keeping up with it, we have a way to easily audit our month-end statement when it arrives, and we have the ability to ensure that the expenses that we enter get credited appropriately in our system. Of the methods that we have for doing data entry, we can enter through the payments window, we can enter through writing checks, we can enter paid vendor invoices through the vendor invoice entry window, and we can track this through actual general journal entries as well. First thing we need to do, since we're going to be tracking things using a special credit cards payable tracking account, is that we need to set that up. In order to set up that tracking account, we can put it someplace in our chart of accounts, usually close to our accounts payable account, and we give it an account type of either cash, other current liability, or even accounts payable. Cash is the preferred method, even though it's really not quite appropriate, because when you have the general ledger accounts hidden for accounts payable entry, you do not have the ability to select non-cash account types, although you can actually do data entry and enter it in manually. Here is our chart of accounts entry window. You'll notice we've set up an account ID right next to our accounts payable account, and we give it the account type of cash. If we have multiple credit accounts, we may need to set up multiple tracking accounts as well. We want to look at it by setting up a separate general ledger account for each statement that we receive. So if we have multiple cards on a single statement, we may only need to set up one account. And here's our credit card account again, and you'll notice that we have another one set up directly below it, also for dealing with credit cards. And again, it's right next to our accounts payable account, so we can find it easily. Other setup that we may need to do is we may need to either set up or modify our credit card vendor to be associated with the account that we just set up. So here's our credit card vendor, and you'll notice that we have changed our expense account to the credit card tracking account that we just set up in the previous step. We now can start recording those payments we've been talking about. We can do direct expenses using the right checks entry window. This is used for expenses that have not already previously been recorded in the system in any way. We can use this to record against a vendor or even somebody that is not currently in our system. This is probably the easiest method we have if you don't need to distribute this expense to multiple general ledger accounts. So here's our entry window. Over in the upper right hand corner, we need to make sure that we're paying out of our credit card account. Then we need to decide if we're going to call up a vendor that exists or simply type in a name. I'm going to go ahead and type in a name in a minute. But we also need to look at what we're going to be using for an expense account. If we use the vendor ID, we'll get a default account that comes in. If we type in a name, we may have to do data entry to enter an expense account. So after we get the date and our payee and our dollar amount entered, we probably want to make sure that our reference number is appropriate for a credit card payment instead of a check. Notice this screen actually says check number, which might be confusing, but this is a reference number for this payment by credit card. I like to use a combination of the date along with some sort of a short description, you can use whatever you want. The only caveat is that this has to be a unique reference number for this particular credit card account. If you're in the latest version of Sage 50, you also have the option of deciding to enter how you made the payment. So in this case, it's a Visa, and that gives us additional reporting tools. We can also make direct expense payments through another window. The payments window in the system is kind of a universal entry tool for entering cash disbursements of any type. You can enter virtually any type of disbursements through this window. So here we can do the same thing we just did for write checks, or we can enter a disbursement that's associated with a vendor that's in the system, just like we could have, but we didn't see in write checks. But we can also actually pay bills that already exist in the system by credit card here. Here's our entry window. Again, the first thing we want to confirm is our credit card account that we're paying out of. Then we again decide, do I want to just type in a name like I did in the previous installation for this gasoline charge I'm going to enter, or do I want to pull up a vendor that exists in the system? In this case, I'm going to pull up a vendor. The vendor isn't a real person. This is a generic vendor that I'm going to utilize for all gasoline purchases, no matter what gas station I go to, so that there's one place I can go to look at all of these gasoline purchases made by credit card. Because it's already set up in the system, it defaults into an expense account for my auto expenses. I can also set it in the latest version to default the payment method, and the fact that we're paying by credit card can also be defaulted as well, so we don't have to change that. After filling in all of the pertinent information, dates, dollar amounts, reference number, we can go ahead and save it, and it takes us back to an empty screen to allow us to do additional data entry. Now we're going to take a look at entering a vendor bill and pay that by credit card. So we're going to go ahead and pull up that same window, pull up a vendor. Because it has a bill, it has to have a vendor, so we're going to pull up the vendor with bills. There's the bills down at the very bottom of the screen. Again, we check for the credit card account. It was still there because we hadn't left the screen after saving the last one. Payment method we might have to adjust or change. We check off the bills that we want to pay, enter an appropriate reference number, and we can go ahead and save it and continue on. Maybe that bill that we entered, we also knew at the same time that we got that invoice, our driver turned in that he paid by credit card. And because that gives us some different reporting methods, well, maybe we want to enter it through the invoice screen for consistency in the way that we enter our bills. So here's our vendor bill screen. We call up the vendor that we want to enter the bill for, enter appropriate bill information including dates, invoice numbers if appropriate, GL accounts, amounts. Maybe we need to deal with a quantity or an actual inventory item. Once we have that all filled in, down at the bottom of the screen, because we're prepaying this or paying this at the time we received the items, we can go ahead and enter the amount that we paid. We can pay the total amount or a partial amount. I'm going to pay the total, and by entering in that number, we have information about how we paid. In this case, by Visa, through our credit card's payable account number. We can give it an appropriate reference and save it to continue on. Well, what do we do with this information that is in our system? Well, one of the most important things that we can do is we can look and see how much we owe to the credit card company without having to wait for the statement or go online, because it's all there in the system if we've been keeping up. And we can look at it through any of the GL reports or financial statement reports out of the system, or we can actually click a button on some of those data entry screens and look it up right there and then on that data entry screen. We're going to look at it through the general journal entry, and there's the amount that we owe to our credit card company. So when the statement arrives, we probably want to, sorry about that, we probably want to enter the bill into the system. We enter this bill just the same as we would a normal bill from any other vendor. Here's our credit card vendor. Here's all of the bill information. You will notice that this gets dispersed to that credit card payable account. We've already expensed it when we entered in the payments. We can then go ahead and audit our statement against the bill that we got, and we do this in Sage 50 through the normal accounts reconciliation screen. Here's what that screen looks like. We enter our credit card tracking account again up here in the upper left hand corner, because that's what we're going to reconcile, and all of our items that we've entered in through other windows that are associated with that tracking number will appear ready for reconciliation. We can put in a statement ending date, a statement ending balance as a negative number because we owe money, not have money, and then we go through and check things off one at a time for the things that are on the statement. When we finish that, if we look down in the lower right hand corner, if everything has reconciled to no unreconciled difference, we're ready to go. If there is a difference, we can use the tools right within this account reconciliation screen to add maybe an additional service charge or whatever. We can save this and exit it out to correct or enter or add new items, or we can use, again, tools right in this reconciliation screen to add new items to this statement to be reconciled. So you have seen how we can use Sage 50 to assist you in tracking expenses that you have paid out through credit cards. We have the ability to audit our statement against information that we've entered in the screen, and we've eased the burden of entry to at the end of our statement cycle to make it a lot easier for entry throughout the system and given us a lot of additional reporting tools. Thank you very much for joining us, and look for other tips, tricks, and secrets to success with your accounting system. Again, thank you.